Hello and welcome back to Artful. Today we're going to be having a look at doing some lino cutting. First, I'm drawing a very basic image of a tree that we will use to trace over with the lino cut blades. You don't have to be particularly careful when drawing this image because none of the pencil is going to show up in your final print. So if you do make a mistake, don't worry about it, just draw over it. I am drawing a dead autumnal tree. I like to give myself a bit of a challenge because it's not just straight lines. I'd like to give myself some odd shapes to try and carve with the lino cut blades. Lino cutting is quite hard to get used to because it's not really the same sensation as drawing. You are carving and you are pushing the blade away from yourself rather than when you draw, it's usually towards yourself. So it is a bit hard to get used to. I wouldn't sketch out anything too complicated when you're getting used to the blades. Try and keep your composition relatively simple just until you get used to the process. And if you really want to push yourself, I'm also adding some smaller trees in the background, which I'll start to carve out with a smaller blade. If you're unsure what size of blade to use, for me a good rule of thumb if you're new to a process is just to select one of the middle blades, and you can see what size the blade is with a number on them, and they are very easy to put into your hilt. All you do is unscrew it and put the rounded edge into the gap and then screw it back in. The one blade we've had a question about which looks more like a curved blade, that is actually a scalpel. So you can use that to cut away bits of the lino that you don't need. But for now, I wanted a more consistent control of my line. I didn't want anything too fiddly, which the smaller blades would give me, and I didn't want something too large because they can cut away massive chunks of the lino, and I didn't want that quite yet. I'm choosing a medium blade just to get used to it. I'd really like to reiterate how important it is that you carve away from yourself when you're using the lino cut blades, because they are very blunt to the touch, but you are putting a lot of pressure on the blades when controlling the flow of your line, and sometimes you slip and you really don't want your fingers in the way when you do that. You'll see that when I want to change direction of the line, if I'm doing say a curved branch, then I will just turn my lino plate. So get into the habit of doing that rather than pointing the blades towards you, because it is very easy to slip and nick yourself by accident. So I'm now using a slightly smaller blade to carve out the forest in the background. I tend to use a larger blade to carve out what's in the foreground because it's more in focus, and then a smaller blade to do the finer details in the background. The smaller blades are a little bit more fiddly, and you may find if you're very used to using, say, a larger or medium blade, that once you start using the smaller ones, it does cut away a bit faster than you're used to, so do brace yourself for that. Remember to put a bit of control on the hilt of the blade by adding a bit more pressure, otherwise it might shoot off in a direction that you don't want to take it in. A thing to consider when lino cutting is that the bits that you carve out are going to be the bits that the ink doesn't register when you make your print, so they will be a pure white. It's almost like drawing negatively, so if you're not used to it, really have a think about what details are going to show up on your print and what details aren't. You should also think about the fact that your final print will be a mirror image of the lino cut that you're making. So if your image needs lettering or you just want it a certain way around, I'd maybe flip the image you're drawing from initially just so everything's in the right place when you get that final print. I'm now using one of the thicker gutter blades to start carving the background on my image. So I have my tree and I have my forest, which I've done with some of the finer blades, but the background I just want to be a pure white sky. I don't want any of it to pick up any ink. And so to do that, I need to carve away as much lino as I can. So you'll see I'm not being particularly precious with how much I cut away. My lino even starts to get holes in it because of how deep I'm digging into it. But because I don't want it to pick up any ink when I print it, that doesn't really matter. So if you want it to be pure white, then you can carve as much as you like from the lino and not worry about it. If you did want this to have a bit more detail, then I would recommend being a bit more careful than I am here. But for this half of the image, I just wanted a pure white background. So I'm just trying to get it carved out as swiftly as I can. So I'm adding quite a generous amount of ink onto my acetate, so you can get an even distribution on your roller. So when you do roll it onto your LinoCut and print it on your paper, you'll have a more consistent colour. You need to apply a consistent pressure onto your paper so it gets that perfect relief of the LinoCut print. So in our last tutorial, we recommended using a wooden spoon, but someone very helpfully in the comments pointed out that you could just use your roller. So that's what I'm doing now. And there we are, a nice simple LinoCut image of an autumnal tree. Lino cutting is quite an involved and long process, but I feel like the results are more than worth it. So please stick at it. The textures you get, the look of the print, it's more than worth it, trust me. Let us know in the comments how you got on with your lino cutting, or if there's any more techniques or mediums that you'd like us to cover. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again soon.